Good morning. My name is Dr. Renee Lofata, and today we will be discussing behavior management. Take a good look at this picture. Yeah, I think this can happen at school, but why don't we talk about home as well as school, especially since children are now at home due to the COVID-19 virus. Now, in looking at this picture, just think it could be you. It could be you at home. It could be you at school. How you respond will actually determine what you will get back. And I'd like to go into how it works. So let's talk about the hostility cycle. And you can put yourself in place of parent or our teacher, whatever feels right to you right now. Where a student actually is impulsively acting out in some sort of way or just refuses to cooperate. The child could have a hostile worldview. Now, of course, with a worldview somewhat like that, the child will possibly act out or have certain behaviors where the teacher or the parent feels attacked or personally disrespected, kind of like the fight or flight. And the teacher and the parent may actually accept that challenge. Well, if the parent or teacher does accept that challenge, oftentimes that student, being the fact that they would like a little bit of power and control in their lives, will accept the challenge from what they now perceive to be that hostile or upset adult, which could actually increase the child's rage. Therefore, the teacher or parent may feel more threatened, more possible arguments, more frustration, the feeling that, boy, I need to go aloof right now. And as you see, this hostility cycle, it just goes round and round and round. I want to talk a little bit about personal boundaries. When you look at the child that's on the left or the adult, the child has no boundaries. And with no boundaries, a child, especially developmentally, since that's the time they are developing, will feel overwhelmed and not be able to develop that identity or self-esteem in a healthy, positive way. Because the child will feel overwhelmed with all this external stuff, such as flattery, negativity, anger, other people's fears, other people's projections, attacks, all getting into that child's ego. And the child can be very overwhelmed. They're absorbing all this like a sponge without boundaries. So anything that's negative is definitely going to get in. Now, let's move over to the right-hand side where that child looks like they're surrounded by a steel wall. Well, it is. It's all boundary. Nothing gets in and nothing gets out. Again, in a situation like this, that child isn't able to have human contact because they won't let any of it in. Even if you love that child and you want to talk to them or nurture them, they've already got that wall up towards you. And by the way, they have a hard time trusting. Therefore, that wall doesn't come out or down for others either. So when that happens, the child or the adult can feel very lonely or empty and definitely feel a lack of self-worth. This is a great chart to be able to discuss a summary of 10 needs. These are responses to a child's needs. And just know the children are very much need-based, and they usually want immediate satisfaction of those needs. But let me go through this. The need For example, for acknowledgement. Well, if a child cannot really delay their behavior and they want it immediately, they will often pester you for that acknowledgement. But if a child's need goes unexpressed, they often will withdraw from that need for acknowledgement. And if a child finds that that need for acknowledgement is often frustrated, the child will tend to rebel in order to eventually get that need met, whether positive or negative. And it's the same thing as you go down the list. For example, if a child needs to have structure, well, if they need it right away, they really want that consistency. They demand it. They want that consistency. They want those schedules. They really need those. If a child's need for structure is unexpressed, the child may very well resist change. Or if the child's need for structure is frustrated, oftentimes they may create chaos in the classroom or at home. They want it now. I just know that's kind of normal, typical behavior of children. They want it now. It's how we respond to that need and how we teach our children to respond to their needs. That is very important. Now, here is a process, and I say it's pretty internal. And if we're familiar with this little structure here, we'll kind of understand what goes into it. So, for example, if I have a thought, say I'm a child, and I'm hungry, my thought is, I'm hungry. The feeling that I have after that thought is, I feel hungry. I feel anxious. I want to eat something. So then I go to doing. Well, okay, my feeling is I just want to eat something. I feel that. I'm hungry. Therefore, I do, and I go get something to eat. All that seems to be an easy process. But what happened from that thought where that feeling was, I'm hungry, I'm anxious, I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to get any food? Then my doing, my reaction to that may be, I'm going to cry. I'm going to steal food. I'm going to sneak the cookies. So now what do I do? Well, I can't change anything at the doing part. And the feeling part, no, the feeling just comes from the thought. Therefore, my thought, I wake up, I'm hungry. My feeling, I feel hungry. I know there's food in the kitchen. I'm going to go get some food. And my doing is I'm going to the kitchen to get some food. And I'm satisfied. But I had to change my thought at the thought level to a positive thought so that I indeed would have a positive feeling. And then I would take the action of doing that was positive. We have 100,000 thoughts a day, and most of them are negative. If we change our thoughts at the thought level, then we wouldn't really have those negative feelings and we wouldn't necessarily have those negative actions or behaviors. But we have to become cognizant of what was that thought in the first place. And then what was my feeling? And how could I change that thought and feel better about it? And then do something positive. Becoming aware of the way we think is imperative not just for our children, but for ourselves. know that our thoughts literally can jail us. We could become jailed because if there are indeed 100,000 negative thoughts a day, and if we succumb to that and not change those thoughts to positive thoughts, and we do negative things, then we jail ourselves in our own minds. Another thing is perception is a mirror. It is not a fact. So, for example, in any relationship, boy, girl, 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 friendship, husband, wife, if you come into a relationship with someone else and you come in it with a bunch of past hurts, angry thoughts, feeling that attack is the only way to get yourself heard, and you project that onto that person tends to absorb it, to take it in, and oftentimes they really don't know what happened. And oftentimes they also feel, why is he or she picking on me all the time? And why do I feel so bad? And why do I take it? Well, oftentimes, as the other person, as the receiver of this, they need to be able to put that mirror up so it bounces right back to the person who delivered that message and possibly say, I understand that this is how you're feeling. Let's talk about it. But for you, the receiver, not to actually own the other person's thoughts. So, in thinking about misbehavior, there are four goals of misbehavior. And if a child actually annoys you, the goal is attention. What do a lot of people do? They ignore it. Sometimes they can't. Understood. But oftentimes it can easily be ignored unless it's not going to help that child or you. Also, that the child's behavior angers you. The goal is often power or control. And what parents and teachers usually need to do is rely upon rules and consequences to remove yourself from the struggle. If a child's behavior hurts you, the child has that goal of possible revenge, or I'm mad at you, therefore this is what's going to happen. What you do as the adult is state your feelings and discuss mutual concerns if you can, but young children, that's a different thing. That's where you usually put down some firm boundaries, but you don't use a lot of words. You just use numbers. I'll explain more later. If a child's behavior makes you feel despair, the goal is to display inadequacy. That's the child's goal. And in doing that, you have to see it for what it is. As an adult, you would find a way to encourage and empower the child. In childhood, there are manipulations. There are ways to get our needs met. There are ways to get our demand and feel in control met. And right now I'll go over 6 manipulations that can be both learned and reinforced in childhood. And in parentheses, you'll see what that means as an adult if you carried it into adulthood. Badgering is repeated questions such as, why can't I? How come? Why not now? It is an eternal series of complaints and gripes. If this works for the child is reinforced to continue badgering. And oftentimes I see adults as interrogators because it works so well for them. The second childhood manipulation would be intimidation. And that's where a child can be very angry. They throw temper tantrums, they yell, they bang doors, they throw a lot of things, they can break things or damage property. And again, as an adult, if this worked for you, oh, I forgot to say, bullying too. If it worked for you, many adults become intimidators. Threats is the third one. And a child would say, use dire consequences will ensure, they'll let you know that, unless you, as the adult, change your behavior. They could say, I'll never talk to you again. Or they could say, I'll hold my breath until you do what I want you to do. And oftentimes, a child will continue to do that. And adults, if it worked for a child for several years, an adult usually has integrated that into their repertoire of behaviors, and they tend to go aloof on threats. The next one is martyrdom. If you see a child crying, pouting, looking sad or depressed, sitting in a closet, designed to make you as the adult to feel guilty. And if it worked for the child as an adult, you could actually become a poor me, where you crave sympathy. The next one is sweetness and light. And that's where sudden sweetness of affection. They may promise nice things, hug or kiss you, say I love you. And if this works, it's always nice to hear, but is it real? Is it real or is it used as a form of manipulation? I want my way, therefore I will flatter you. The last one and most drastic form of testing is usually physical. And that's usually the less frequent. It includes physically attacking you or running away from you. And as an adult, if this worked for you, well, you may have big problems. But one definite behavioral concern is becoming an intimidator. So in working with children, 3 ideas that may help is number 1, the need to establish clear-cut goals or boundaries. The second one is the need to praise good performance, good behavior. And 3, the need to provide consequences when a child's performance fails to contribute to the attainment of commonly agreed goals or boundaries. Negotiating usually offers a process where both sides can come away winners. Usually in getting possibly into a debate or a discussion with a child over what it is that they want right now, you probably want to be able to talk to them and say, what else can we do to make this be reasonable for you? And then from that, you can say, well, after listening to them intently and compassionately, be able to consider what they have to say and how a compromise can be reached by the two of you. That's when you both come away winners. Always make it a win-win solution if you can. When you are talking with this child, always have their attention and give them all the information that they need to do what is expected and appropriate to their developmental age of understanding. Sometimes charts work great, and many parents have done this successfully. Teachers as well. They may have charts in their classroom and rules, and those expectations are reinforced on a daily basis. How do you give support without interfering? How do you put down boundaries? Well, through active listening, being there for your child, being present, not doing something else, multitasking, but sitting down with the child and listening to that child. And because you're so good at listening, you're also reflecting the message back to the child of your understanding of what the child is trying to say. The most important thing that you need to think about is avoid an argument. Avoid needing to be in control. Just understand what the behaviors are, what the situation is, and be able to assess what comes next. Another thing that a child needs is unconditional positive regard, not criticism, sarcasm, tone of voice raising, judgment. They really need that positive regard from you. And the last but not least is willingness for another to be separate. So often I see parents come into a meeting with teachers and administrators, and they will make excuses for their child, and then they'll talk about their behavior, their adult behavior, or what it was like when they were a child. Many parents or families that I have seen throughout the years will try to own those behaviors or think that they're responsible for a child's behaviors. Well, they're really responsible for a child's behaviors in helping that child to recognize them and to make better choices, as all adults are. So I figured that this little list right here is pretty important to all of us. These are 19 ways to maintain student behavior. You can read them, and I will just point out a couple of them that I think and feel strongly about. And you may have different ones that you feel strongly about. But never give an order you do not mean to enforce to a child. Give a student or a child time to react to what it is that you're saying instead of go on and on and on. That's called lecturing. Give the child time to even see that that might be occurring, because the child's not always in the present moment. They could be in the future or the past. You really need to understand where that child is coming from. Be honest in what you say and do. Know that a child's faith in you is a great help. Be fair. It isn't punishment, but injustice that makes a child rebel against you. Try to be constructive, not repressive, in all dealings with children. Do not judge misconduct on how it annoys you. And do not take your personal feelings and prejudices out on the child. Do not lose your temper, because then the child has got that big splash from you, an emotion. They may try that again several times afterwards. Never hold a child up to public ridicule. It is the surest way to create a discipline problem. And an adult's will should never be pitted against that of a child. It is far wiser to give some simple directions that will be mechanically obeyed and pick up the reins of control in a quiet way. Please, in your spare time, go ahead, print this page out, read it, remember it. It will help. Helpful confrontation. Realize a few things. First off, don't ignore the problem. It's going to be there. You have to address it. It's not going to go away. but do it in a time and in a climate and in an environment that you can. Just know that to be able to do this, there must be a relationship to begin with. Do it privately, one-on-one, not around the rest of the kids. And the climate must be a climate of caring. Suggest that a child's behavior needs changing, not the child. Not the child because you might think, oh, you're bad. No, a child's never bad. It's the behavior that can be disturbing. However, behavior can change. Bad, well, there is no such thing of a completely bad child. Also express feelings, not judgments. How you feel, not how they feel you. And own the intensity of your own feelings. I would not get involved in a discussion with a child until you can control your own emotions. And then talk to that child on a level where you can understand them and they can understand you. In praising that child, tell the child beforehand that you are going to let them know how they are doing. Praise them immediately. Children need it. Tell them what they did right and be specific about that. Tell them how good you feel about what they did right. Also make sure that I bet you feel great. Let them own those feelings, those positive feelings. Let them own it. And stop for a moment of silence to let them feel how good you feel or they feel. Encourage the child to do more of the same. Praise is necessary, but praise is just not sufficient. To facilitate a child's healthy self-esteem, provide generous amounts of valuing, opportunities to develop competency, opportunities for doing good deeds, and structure a child's routines and limits. Also, sometimes we react without really knowing that a child is within our company. Always be aware of how you are interacting while in the company of children. Children are more aware than we sometimes realize. Children will always learn more from what we do than what we say. We call this, mom and dad and teacher, role modeling. Stay tuned for more workshops or presentations regarding parent and teacher, student coaching, 1, 2, 3 Magic behavior management, which is great for children 2 through 12 years old, stress management, classroom management strategies, assertiveness and assertive discipline, peer mediation, interpersonal communication dynamics, and understanding body language. Thank you and have a wonderful day. Bye.